I am so excited to welcome Matt Hilliard to the show. Matt is a relationship expert and men's group leader. And after spending years invested in a fantasy of what a relationship should be, easy, comfortable, and sexy all the time, right? And a reality that was quite the opposite, Matt got serious, training and experience in how to really listen, feel, and to deal with conflict, how to understand what's actually happening in relationships. Matt helps men wake up to better relationships every day through coaching and his men's group Awake. And he's appeared on various podcasts. His writing has been published in The Elephant Journey, The Men's List, and The Good Men Project. Matt is also a parent of 2 teenagers and is in the best relationship of his life. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. I'm really excited to be here. It's pretty cool kind of hearing all those things. I'm like, yeah, blimey. Here I am.
Here you are. And it's pretty cool us connecting because Matt and I we're both in Toronto, North America. We both come from a similar part of London. I say similar.
So it's like 2 miles apart, I reckon. Like Teddington, Whitton, it's like ridiculously close.
Yeah, 2 miles apart, and yet 2 very different places.
2 very different places. Yeah, although, probably more different now than certainly when I was growing up.
Yeah. We're both from West London, and I would just say if you want to go out for a pint in London and have to pick between Teddington and Whitton, do not choose Whitton. Go to Teddington. Better pubs and much more safe.
That's true. If the Anglers is still there, I'm sure it is. The Anglers down by the river is a good place for a pint.
Matt, how did you get into this space? How did you get into the relationship space? What's your story? Let the Couply audience know.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks again for having me. This is a real this feels just like a real gift to be able to kind of talk about what I do and talk about relationships with you. I became a relationship coach and a relationship expert because I had struggled so much in relationships. I found them easy to get into, and those first few months to be pretty, just kind of fun and fantastic and great, and then there's the kind of the period afterwards which could be okay as well. And then like in my late teens and 20s, I was pretty much a serial monogamist, and the relationships would kind of hit a dead end for me, and so I would kind of like overlap them with new relationships or kind of get out in pretty just kind of like clumsy ways. And then I got married and like had my first kid and then my second kid, and like marriage was really, really challenging for me. There was some, my wife, the woman I married, we're not married anymore. There were many like wonderful qualities about the marriage, but I really struggled to have a good functioning marriage, and I came up against myself most of all, and I made some choices as I tried to cope that kind of just weren't very healthy. They weren't kind, they weren't thoughtful, and it came to a place of reckoning for me, where I was like, I need to just really kind of look at who I am, why I keep coming up against these same challenges in my relationship life, and really start taking responsibility for them. I'd spent a lot of time, like blaming other people for what wasn't working in my relationship, and that wasn't getting me anywhere. As much as I wished it was all somebody else's fault. How easy would that be? You just go and fix yourself and come back, and then everything will be fine. That's what I used to believe, and it was like not true. It was not true. So experiencing enough pain in my relationship life to really spend time looking at what was happening under the surface for me.
Mm-hmm.
Why was I making some of these choices? Why was I in some of these recurring loops that weren't helping? And it was really discovering some like proper road tested relationship perspectives, relationship tips, relationship tools, getting into some of my kind of childhood background as to why I was occurring like I was in relationship, that really helped me understand my relationship better and my relationships better. And that for me, that clarity meant that my marriage wasn't viable. Mm-hmm. Both I don't want to talk too much about my ex because you know there's her stories to tell. Mm-hmm. But coming to that clarity and that realization that couldn't work, and leaving with an understanding of how I had contributed to that, what the part I played in that, clarity about why it didn't work, and then being able to move forward in my relationship life with a clarity of what a good relationship looks like, feels like, and how to nurture and maintain mm-hmm. a good relationship. And in that process of learning, of exploring, I got really passionate about helping other people in their relationships.
It's like when you have looked into this really deeply, you begin to realize that there are some pretty awesome things that you can do, and they aren't really taught. They're not really talked about. These aren't sort of things that as men will get together and talk about with the lads in the Anglers in Teddington or the Admiral Nelson in Witten. We don't say like, oh wow, there's these really great ways to build a relationship that will last forever. Here are some. Have you tried? Have you tried active listening with your missus? You know.
Have you tried like really validating her, mate? Have you? That's the ticket. That one.
We don't do that. And even like I've noticed sort of as I've got older, we've also stopped even talking about like our relationships that much. We sort of becomes almost something that's a little bit on the other side of a brick wall. It felt different as we were younger because people were dating new people and finding new relationships, and people you enter that like maybe half of your group is in that limerence phase where it's all new and exciting. It's like, oh yeah, I've met a really nice bird, and this is all like like everything's happening. And then obviously fast forward, we're meeting now, and I'm 38, so like 38-year-olds, everyone's got kids, and there's a little bit of some people have kids, some people don't. Some people are married, some people are divorced, some people on their second marriages, and everything just seems like a little bit separate, a little bit behind a wall. Not something that people are really talking about. And that's why when you but after like 6 pints, that's when sometimes the truth starts to come out, right? That's when, especially if you are in this space like I am, like you are, that's when people are like, I'm not happy, things are going wrong, I don't know what to do, I'm freaking out. So perhaps there is a little bit of that time when people do open up at the very, very last moments. But there's a massive amount of work to be done in letting people know some of these things so they don't get into these negative relationship cycles that are bloody hard to get out of once you're actually in one.
That's so true. A couple of things there. One, it can feel like shameful to say like my relationship is shit right now, or like I'm really struggling and I don't know what to do. I think there's the myth of the one out there, and when we first meet somebody and there's that energy and the chemistry, the dopamine, and it can feel like they're the only, like that's them, that's the one. And the fantasy of the one is like, when I find that person and it's you, I've just found you, everything's going to be easy all the time. and our friends see us and we're like, just like, yeah. And we're meeting their friends and they're so happy all the time, and like the
Yeah.
sex is easy, and there's just a lot of give and take. And so when we do, and it always happens when we do hit those rough spots, and then those rough spots continue because we don't have the tools to get through them properly,
Mm-hmm.
it can begin to feel like not only like a personal failure that our relationship isn't working, but kind of a like a societal failure that we kind of met this person and now it all seems to be going to shit. And to admit that is confronting.
You're right, because it's also kind of your subconscious is like, oh great, I've just found another thing that I'm shit at.
Yeah.
Oh great,
Yeah.
this is another thing that I'm not very good at. And it can really bleed into a lot of other like underlying beliefs. Like some people are like, maybe I'm not meant to be happy, maybe this isn't for me, or
Yeah.
maybe this person isn't right. And you
That one especially is because the fantasy of the one and the happily ever after. Like I think I was probably like maybe 4 when I first heard that phrase. I probably went like when my mum was reading to me at bedtime, or you know stories that told to us by teachers at school, and then they lived happily ever after in the Disney movies. Like it's supposed, like that's in our formative years. That's when we're like just really really forming what we understand about the world. And it's such a potent idea, like happily ever after. That yeah, when that doesn't happen, it can, and I think that's why it's often easy to blame in the relationship, like blame myself, because like I'm kind of not able to create or maintain this happily ever after, or I picked the wrong person actually, because it's supposed to be easy, so I must have picked the wrong person.
How can we disassemble this myth of it's supposed to be easy? Because you hear this over and over and over again, and it's absolutely, it's so damaging, because for 2 reasons. One, because if you just chase this new relationship energy that first 2 years over and over and over again, right, that becomes a cycle.
That was my 20s.
And the second thing, because once you exit that first 2 years, all these brain chemicals calm down, and then you now begins actually truly getting to know your partner. And underneath that, if you can keep digging and keep working on it when it's not easy, is a deeper level of relationship that it is going to be it's a lot more work to like dig down and discover, but the rewards are like far greater. But most people don't get there, or let's say 40% of people aren't going to make it there. If we look at that as the current stat for marriages in the US, 40% don't work out, and they do finish in that first few years. And anyone listening to this knows that this was my experience as well. Matt and I had similar experiences. I am divorced as well, and so very, very, very similar to Matt, was blaming or thinking like maybe it's a me thing. And then as I started to look into this more, which became the genesis of Couply, I was like, wow, there are some really cool things here. This is a really cool relationship science here, and great things, which we're going to talk about now, that to make sure that this doesn't happen to you, the listener, especially if this is your second big relationship and you're like us and you're like, this one, we're going to work on this, we're going to make sure it happens. And so what are some of the things that we need to do then? What are some of these like shovels that we need to get out, pickaxes, to make sure that we can like dig deeper?
Oh, I love this question, Tim. One of the things that's helped me the most, continues to help me the most, is thinking about my relationship as a path, like some might say spiritual path, like as a path for growth. So a relationship isn't like a set it and forget it thing. You meet the person and everything kind of just happens as it's supposed to happen. It's actually a journey that unfolds over time, where I get to meet myself over and over and over again. And if I choose to, which you've chosen to do, and I choose to do, is to look at myself in the relationship as those challenges arise. I'm like, okay, I have a choice here. What choice do I want to make? Do I want to lean in? Do I want to lean back? If I lean in, what does that look like? How do I learn to listen better if that's a challenge for me? How do I learn to validate if my partner isn't feeling validated? How do I learn to just hold space for her fullness, her emotions? What do I have to do? What learning do I have to do in order to be able to hold that space for her? One of the contexts I provide for the clients that I coach is to think about your relationship as a garden. You're both there's you, there's your partner, and there's the relationship, which is bigger than both of you. It's more than the sum of its parts. And you think about a garden, looking out the window at my garden, like if you don't tend to it regularly, it's going to get full of weeds. The grass is going to get overgrown. The garden's going to get like dug up by squirrels and skunks and whatever. Weeds are going to grow and they're going to get out of control. And kind of this goes back to what you were saying earlier about, the kind of the sort of the conversation 6 drinks in at the pub, when the truth might start coming out, is often people start to focus on their relationships when the relationships get hard and challenging. If you can get into habits of nurturing your relationship on a regular, even daily basis, you're so much more likely to have an incredible relationship than if you're stumbling from crisis to crisis and only facing your relationship and only really facing one another when you're in a shitstorm.
What are the moments? Because when you talk about leaning in, right, you talk about you have these choices, where I lean into a path or I lean out. What are some of those things look like?
What does it look like to lean in, or what are the circumstances?
What are the circumstances? What are these situations? Because we can talk about it as a concept, but I think for our audience listening, some of these things, I think I know where you're going to go with it, and some of these things aren't as big as you think, right? Some of these things can be quite small, but it's building that muscle, building that habit of leaning forward and leaning back. So that's why I'd love to hear from you sort of some of these situations that you have a lean in opportunity or a lean back opportunity.
I have a great example from a client the other day, and his partner was out, he was at home. He has a 4-year-old, and he had made dinner for his 4-year-old, and his partner called, and she said, what did you feed him for dinner? And he explained what he'd prepared for their son for dinner. And she said, oh, there's no protein in that. So he immediately got defensive, and which is something that he's done before. And it just kind of spiraled into this conflict, into the space that they know very well, very familiar. So he and I were exploring it, and I was like, okay, what if you'd been curious in that moment? What if you had been curious and tried to kind of just understand where she was coming from? Like, what would that have sounded like? So we did this little role play, and I was like her calling and getting a bit annoyed, like, what, where's there's no protein in that. And he says, it sounds like it's really important to you that he gets protein in his dinner. And I could just like feel myself relax, like, oh, he heard me. Yeah, it is actually. Yeah, it is important. It is important that he gets protein with his dinner. right? And then that conversation can have a completely different flow than the one that kind of actually happened, where he was super defensive. It's just like, it's just a small thing, right? A small everyday situation when we're living with somebody, like those, there's 100 of those a day. So there's like, 100 opportunities to get it really wrong, but also 100 opportunities to just lean in, be curious.
These examples are always so interesting, right? Because relationships are built and destroyed on these tiny things.
Yeah.
And it sounds so
Yeah.
small. You're like, huh? Well, as a kid, I mostly grew up on chip butties and jam donuts. Wasn't ideal, made it through.
Yeah.
However, right? Let's start going down. Let's go one level deeper. Was
Yeah.
it an ask around, hey, actually, I've been doing a lot of the mental lifting in the background, and you haven't acknowledged that, but I've actually made a pretty robust nutrition plan for our kids. I always
Yeah.
make sure that they get protein. I always make sure that they get greens. And then surprise, surprise, when dad cooks, they're getting French fries in bread.
Yeah.
Not there is not you might be doing the cooking, but you're not really lifting up your side of the actual mental load bargaining
Right.
here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That could be one. Another thing
Yeah.
could be, maybe we have a history of heart disease in our family, and I'm trying to protect my family
Yeah.
by making sure they have a balanced diet. It sounds
Yeah.
so small. These are like the tiny conversations, but as you start to like dig deeper and explore, there can
Yeah.
be some really big things underneath here. And I think there's something around when someone comes at you with that energy, it
Mm-hmm.
probably means that there is something behind it.
Yeah.
There's going to be a value attached
Yeah.
to it, a belief attached to it.
Yeah.
That is worth, either way, it's worth digging up and exploring, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a listening technique that I teach a lot, and it's really as the listener, what you're trying to do is understand the other person's world, where they're coming from. So even in the microcosm of a discussion around, was there protein in our son's dinner or not, like you're saying, like if I'm curious, I may discover something about you, even though we've been together for for years, that I didn't know before. Like I might discover that, yeah, like there was heart disease in your family, and you're like terrified of you having that, of our son inheriting, and it's like, oh, okay, all right, I understand why this protein thing is so important to you right now. I did not know that, so I'm making it my responsibility to just kind of lean in and really get what your world is.
And
It's
it's
a
hard
gift.
because
Yeah.
it is a like you're saying, that is a gift that you give someone, even if they're coming at you. But it's
Yeah.
bloody hard if they're coming at you with criticism for you not to respond with
Yeah.
defensiveness, because no one likes to
Yeah.
be made to feel bad, be made to feel like they're not good enough. And also in that moment, it was probably especially hard because you're on the phone, you've got it balanced on your shoulder, you're cooking something up, your 4-year-old's in the background
Yeah.
going mental, and
Yeah.
you're now getting it through the phone, and you're like, excuse me, I'm doing my bloody best. But
Yeah.
there might be something where you can lean in that second and be like, okay, I hear what you're saying, let's talk about this properly when you get home.
Yeah.
Kids in bed, you sit down, you're having dinner, maybe with protein in it, and you can have that conversation for real, and you can be like, hey,
Yeah.
what's let's talk about this. Where's the disconnect? How can we get aligned
Yeah.
here? What do you really think about that? But these are not small skills, and it's not a natural feeling. And I think there's a tension here, and I'm really curious, Matt,
Mm.
if this is a tension that you discover in your clients, where it's like people are saying, whoa, this isn't authentic. This is like, I don't feel, this is not how I feel in that moment. Therefore, it's not
Mm-hmm.
authentic. Therefore, should I really be doing this?
Mm. Like, should I be like being curious, and like, shouldn't
Yeah.
I just be kind of like defending myself and expressing where I'm at?
Yeah.
Yeah, God, that's so tempting, right? But where's that ended? You know, where are you ending up when you do that? Right, where you're like getting defensive and like taking your stand and kind of like, where's that getting you? Like for most of you, most of us, when I do that, I end up in a place that's shitty, where I'm like, so what happens when we take that defensive stance is all of a sudden we're in the boxing ring with our partner, and we're opponents, and it's either they're going to win or I'm going to win. And if I'm going to win, it's because I'm being louder, being meaner. So that might be a win for me in the moment, but it's not a win for the relationship. If my partner's going to win, it's because she's being meaner, she's being louder, and I'm going to cave in. I'm just going to like, and that doesn't feel good, and it's not really a win. But yeah, like if we get back to the garden, like, okay, what does our relationship need right now? Actually, it needs us to kind of understand why protein is important for our son at dinner time. Like that's what our relationship needs right now. So let's step into the garden.
And here's the thing as well. It's like, you think about if you're having a brawl with someone, even if it is a mental brawl, you're bringing all these different weapons out to try and win. Like you imagine that when you're bringing the pickaxe out, you're digging stuff up, you're throwing it at your partner. You've got all the nevers, these nuclear bombs are dropping. Like think about the landscape of your garden after that war has gone on. It's trashed, right? Whereas what you could have done is dug deeper, planted a seed, and oh my goodness, think about how your partner's going to feel when they feel validated and heard. And Matt, what does that mean? So as you start to move people away from these automatic responses and into curiosity, into digging a little bit deeper, what does that do for your clients?
It creates more intimacy, because there's more trust and there's more connection. It's an incredible experience for a couple when they can move fully through a conflict, as in, it's like, say the conflict is at a 10 on the meter, and it's a 0. They both feel heard. They both feel validated. It's put to bed. There's nothing under the carpet. There's a sense of like intimacy and connection that comes with that. The more you do that, the more trust is created, because there's always going to be conflict. There's always going to be bumps. So you get to a point where there's a disagreement about something, and your old self would be like, fuck, this is it, this is done, I'm out, like I'm with the wrong person. You go from that to like, oh, we'll figure this out. It's uncomfortable right now, but we'll talk about it, we'll use our tools, we'll get through it. Like in my relationship with my partner, that there are things in my past that would have taken me days, if not weeks, to get through. And most often that looked like just kind of giving it enough time, like ignoring it till my nervous system calmed down, and then like kind of forgetting about it. To today, where we can move through stuff in minutes, hours, maybe a day or two at most, like fully through it. And the trust and the intimacy, the kind of the leaning in that comes from being able to do that is extraordinary. And the sense of being a team, the sense of togetherness is really, really powerful.
Is this Is this the top challenge that you kind of see in the people that you coach? This communication, defensiveness, ego, moving from that to curiosity, repair, alignment. Is that like one of the big challenges, or are there other things?
It's one of the big ones. Having effective tools to communicate and resolve conflict. Like most of us, I would say, were not raised in environments where there were good models of communication and conflict resolution. So we just lean on what what's second nature to us, which is what we saw our parents do and our caregivers, siblings and stuff. So most of us just do not have those skills and tools. So that's number one. A big one that I was giving a talk a couple of weeks ago, and I opened the talk with 2 questions. Hands up if you've ever been made to feel like you're too emotional. And pretty much all the women in the audience raised their hand. I'm like, raise your hand if you've ever been made to feel like you're too much. All the women, hands in the air. And one of the big issues is men's lack of capacity to hold space for their female partner's emotional expression. And what often that looks like for the woman is being told that she's too emotional, she's too much. She gets shut down. The reason she gets shut down is because a lot of men are shut down. So if I'm not used to those, like literally the sensations of joy, even sadness, anger, shame, guilt, if I'm not used to what those are in my body, it doesn't mean I don't feel them. It just means I don't know how to label them, and I push them down, so I'm not familiar with those emotions moving through my body. It means that I'm usually like rubbish. So if my partner is feeling sad and I'm not used to feeling sad, I'm going to be like, oh, that's really uncomfortable for me. So I'm just going to like either shut her down or I'm going to leave because this is like really, really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So a big part of my work with men is around getting them familiar with their emotional landscape. And that's a real gift to a relationship as well. One of the things I teach men, and like if you're listening, kind of like just grab a pen and write this down. It's really simple. If you're feeling activated, so that could be, anger, it could be sadness. Number one, just where am I on the scale? Like 10 being like, if I'm angry, like 10 would be like punching a wall, like tipping a table over, like screaming at the top of my head, like running out of the door because I cannot be in connection anymore. So like, where am I between 1 and 10? Just name it. I'm a 6 going up to a 7. Number 2, name the emotion to myself. Okay, what is it? Like, am I frustrated? Am I angry? Am I sad? Just swing for the fences. Like, even if you feel like you're guessing, it's like, okay, like I'm 6 going on 7. Okay, I'm angry. Naming the emotion helps you connect with it more fully in a present way, because you're noticing what's happening for you. So I notice that I'm angry instead of just like being angry and whatever. That's like, okay, I'm angry. And then the third is to like feel the sensation. What am I feeling in my body right now? okay, like I'm feeling like tightness in my chest. And you can kind of put your hand there and that helps you connect to that. And you can do this in like 5 seconds. Okay, like I'm a 6 going on a 7. I'm angry. I can feel the tightness in my chest. And just that helps a man map his emotional experience. The more he does that, the more familiar he's going to be with his partner's emotional expression, the more he's going to be able to stay present for her. And what that means, and the third thing is, as men, we're valued for problem solving, fixing, finding solutions for stuff. And we often bring that into our relationships. So our partner comes to us and says like, oh, I'm really upset. Like this thing happened at work with Hillary. And we go into like, oh, right. Okay. What you should have done is, you know that thing I said last time, like, did you try that? We get into like this problem solving mode. And then our partner's like getting annoyed at us and frustrated. And we're like, well, I'm only trying to help. Like, you shouldn't have come to me, like, if you didn't want my help. So we I think a lot of people can relate to that, listening to this. So for men to take off their fixing hats and to be able to be present for their partner and hold that emotional space for them. Oh, it makes sense why you're upset with Hillary. Yeah, of course. If she's doing that, yeah, I'll be pissed off as well. Yeah.
And for people listening, this holding emotional space, can we just like get into a little bit more of that definition? I think it's basically around, I'm going with the garden metaphor, Matt, I'm staying with it. But basically, it basically means your partner's bringing an emotional like color to the space, and you get in there and you try and see that color with them. So they are feeling very frustrated. So you get in there and you're like, okay, you're feeling frustrated, and let's explore all of the reasons why this room, this garden is this color right now.
Beautiful. Yeah, like I want to understand why you're frustrated. It might be obvious. Yeah, all right, yeah, I get it. Like I totally get why you're frustrated. Or like, yeah, like I can't, yeah, like tell me more about why, like what happened. Like I want to understand why you're so upset about this. So I can support you better, not so I can fix it, but just so I can support you better. So yeah, exactly that. Like what's the emotional color that's in the room, and kind of being in there with our partner versus trying to shut it down, versus trying to change the color.
Yeah, because we know that in the cupboard we've got 15 paint cans of white paint, and we're itching to get it out and
as quickly as possible. Yeah,
exactly. And it's really weird because two things make this so strange. One is that through our life we are typically rewarded on how quickly and robustly we fix things. In sport, you need to be fixing things on the fly immediately. You're getting called out by your coach. Do this, you do it, you get accolades. You also get rewarded on your, not necessarily aggression, but assertiveness. Assertiveness is so powerful in your life. It's going to get you the jobs. It's going to get you promoted. And this combined with problem solving, like hardcore problem solving and assertiveness and conscientiousness, will lead you to like a lot of wonderful material, like riches. Like you're going to get great exams. You're going to be an awesome athlete. You're going to have a fantastic job, and you're going to get a lot of success from those skill sets, right? And then you get into your relationship and you're like, yeah, I've got problem solving tools. I'm assertive. I can shut people down. I can lead. Watch me boss this relationship. And then it doesn't work. And you have your playbook, and you're like, this has led to all of the success. It must work. It must work in my relationships. And it doesn't. And it blows people's minds.
It blows people's minds. So there's something wrong with the relationship. There's something wrong with a partner, because this is my playbook and it works for me. So like, like I'm a successful dude. So yeah, something else is the problem. Add into that the male ego. Like because we're valued so much for our problem solving, all the things that you said, like failure in air quotes is a fucking uncomfortable experience. It means I am failing as a man. And that's a hard one to wrestle with. You are not failing as a man. It's just the models and tools that you've been given are not applicable to a successful relationship.
They are not applicable to a successful relationship. And I think the message that I think is so important for guys to hear is like, look, you're smashing it. It's great that you have those tools. Building these tools is going to make you more powerful. It's going to make you more powerful because you're also going to be able to be for someone there emotionally, and you're building a garden with someone together, right? This isn't something that you're building alone, that your partner watches you do. This is something you have to craft and shape together. And like you say, this is going to be this winding path for the rest of your life, and it's going to be the most rewarding journey that you go on the rest of your life as well.
Absolutely. It's going to make you a better parent. And what I'm as well, like if you have kids, what I mean by a better parent is you're going to be more connected with your kids. I have a client who's just working on this right now, and his default has been to be what he calls like the drill sergeant, like in the home. But he's learning to come into his family environment with more presence, with more curiosity. And I do it with my kids too. Like when we do that, like you can literally feel the difference because your children respond to you differently. They start like asking you the most amazing questions, saying the most wonderful things to you. Like there's a kind of a softness and a connection that emerges in that space if we're bringing that curiosity and that presence, that emotional regulation. Like if you're a parent, like you know what I mean, like your ability to stay like emotionally regulated, like you need that as a parent, and you need that as a partner as well.
It's super cool. Like I think this is super cool. I think this is like the stuff that people, you're not taught, you're not rewarded for it, and then it can really harm you not having this skill set later on in life. So I think I just really love it, exploring this.
I want to tell a quick story if that's all right.
Let's do it.
So I grew up in a household, quite typical English household, certainly, where like everything happened under the surface. There wasn't much emotional expression. And when my dad like specifically said more than once, like anger is not a useful emotion, I was like maybe 4 or 5 when I first heard that. So I'm like, okay, like anger is not a useful emotion. So I believed that I wasn't an angry person and that I didn't get angry. But at the same time, I had these sensations in my body, like intense sensations, but they couldn't be anger because anger's not useful and not really welcome here. So I didn't know what that was. Also, I remember maybe when I was 6, my granddad dying, my dad's dad dying. And I remember being, the news being given to me by my mom, and my dad was there, and he was just like kind of flat, like no tears, no visible signs of sorrow or grief. I never saw any. So I was kind of curious as a 6-year-old, because I was like, well, if mum or dad died, I'd be pretty fucking devastated. But from observing my dad, I was like, oh, okay. So no anger, no sadness. Like two big ones, 2 big natural emotions, like cut those off. And so I was like emotionally stunted for a long time. And in my marriage, that looked like I felt like I was watching my life from behind glass. It's like, there's my wife, there's my son, and I wanted things to be different. I wanted to feel different. I wanted my son to have a different experience growing up, a different connection growing up than I had had with my dad. But I didn't know what the gap was. I had no idea what the gap was. I was on a coffee break at work, and someone had left a magazine on a table, and I was flipping through it, and there was an article about like a men's group, and I read it, and it was like, I need to like get in this group as soon as fucking possible. Like, I didn't really know why. And I found out that there was a group that met in Toronto. I called up the guy. I went along, and it was in that men's group that I learned, like, it was kind of ridiculous. It was a bit like kindergarten. Like, I learned how to name my feelings for the first time and connect them to the sensations in my body. Oh, that's what anger feels like. Oh, it's all right to feel, hang on, it's all right to feel anger? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Not only is it all right to feel anger, it's all right to express anger, like, safely, like in a safe environment. Oh, it's all right to like feel sadness. I hadn't cried for like a decade. I had a lot of grief that I had to let go of. It was extraordinary. I felt like a fuller person at the end of it. Shortly after that time, maybe a couple of years after, my grandma died, my dad's mum, amazing woman. And it was the end of the funeral. People were filing out of the chapel, and it was just me and my dad. And I'd done this work. I'd done this work to feel my sadness, to express my sadness. And he kind of sensed that. And we had this hug, and he started crying on my shoulder for his mum, probably for his dad too. And it was this really beautiful moment that could happen because he sensed that I could hold space for him. I wasn't going to shut him down. I wasn't going to judge him. I was just going to be there with him. And that's what can happen. That's what can happen.
It's these moments are sometimes the hardest, and also sometimes the most beautiful moments in your life. You know what I mean? Like, to be able to cry with a parent, to be able to honor someone that's dying or died, and be able to be in it,
Beautifully said.
Is some of the most powerful moments of your life. These are the moments that make our lives worth living.
They are. And if you're terrified of those moments, you've got some work to do. And it's good work. It's real work. It's work that connects you to your heart. The more you're connected to yourself, the more you can connect to somebody else. The more deeply you're connected with yourself, the more deeply you can connect with another person, whether that's your wife, your husband, your girlfriend, your kids, your brother, your sister, your mum, your dad. Absolutely.
Amazing. And for those listening to this, you know, you're an hour into two guys just talking about emotions for an hour. we've been, and so you're listening to this, you're doing the work. You are here to learn, you're here to grow. And I know that in Couply, it's often led by the females. I hear this from who we speak to, and I know we're going to have a lot of females listening to this. It's hard to lead a guy to this stuff. It's hard to lead a guy to this stuff, right? Because it'll come through. It's very difficult to not verbalize this to a guy without through a lens of criticism, right? It's like you hear this complaint all the time when people will say, well, my partner's not there with me. He's like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
ghost. He's here physically, but he's not here. And that really gets confusing for a lot of
Mhm.
guys, because they're like, what do you mean? I'm here. I'm fixing the sink. I'm
Yeah.
painting the room. Like, how am I
Yeah.
not here?
I go out and do my job every day. Like I bring home the bacon. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a way that, and I know it's, we shouldn't be outsourcing this to the ladies as well, but
Mhm.
I just know that they're going to be listening to this. I mean, maybe send it to
Yeah.
them, be like, hey, listen to these two guys talk about emotions for an
I
hour.
think so. I mean that's a great step. But yeah, yeah, it's two guys talking about emotions for an hour. There's I think there's a way. Yeah, absolutely. It's very easy for this to sound like criticism and blame, and a guy is gonna, like, most of us, like, if we feel blamed or criticized, we're gonna get defensive. So one way to bring this up with your guy, like, with your partner, especially a male partner, is to, like, sell the benefits of it. Like, hey, like, I really would love it if we could fight less. Or you're doing all these amazing things for us, and there's a connection that we had at the beginning that I'd really love back. Or there are some places. Oh, this is a good one. We love to provide. Men love to provide. It's in our DNA. It's in our training as we grow up. So for a woman to use that language of providing, like, I'd really like you to provide me with, like, just more emotional support. Like, if we can figure out what that would look like, that would feel really amazing to me.
Mm-hmm. And it's important as well to, like, to make sure, I think this is really important, is as you're saying these things, it's like you have to make sure you're sketching out how that actually looks. Because I think a lot of people don't understand what emotional support means. You're going to say,
Yeah.
I support you emotionally. I am working 2 jobs. I fix stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
take out the trash. Like, I do this. I do all of these things. And it's like, no, I want us to be able to, I want us to be able to have some deeper conversations. I want us to be able to
Yeah.
connect in a more deeper way. And there's amazing benefits to this. We did like a survey where it's like, hey, what things do you want to see more in your sex life? And
Yeah.
emotional intimacy kept coming
Yeah.
up. Emotional
Yeah.
intimacy. Because one
Exactly.
leads to another.
It does. So when I say I help men have better sex, it's not like, try this position or that position, or, kind of do these, like, physical techniques. It is about that emotional connection. It's about that emotional presence. Like, there's just so much kind of juicy passion in that space, and in the if you come into that space with vulnerability, like, it's rich to have that happening in your relationship. It's just, like, exquisite. So for that as well, like, honey, I'm gonna, like, if we start having these conversations, like, I'm gonna be like, that's really hot to me. Like, I'm gonna be,
Yes.
like, turned on. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be dragging you to the bedroom, like, because, like, when you kind of meet me here, like, honey, like, I'm ready. Yeah. And, like, what guy isn't gonna be like, oh, all right, okay, what is it you want me to do again?
Right.
where do I start?
It is bloody hard, right? Because, like, for guys, the expectations, they change, by the way. So to get into a relationship, you've got to be good looking, have a good job, and have, like, have this skill set, and then to keep it, it's a completely different skill set.
Yeah.
And it's not fair. It's not fair. But
It's not fair.
Just how it works.
It's not fair, and it's confusing, right? Because we
Yeah.
again, like, we have this playbook, and we're like, here it is, I'm
Yeah.
set for life. And then it's confusing when that shit doesn't work. It's like, fuck. So to have that, with that clarity of like, okay, I've got some work to do. This is what the work is, comes confidence, and confidence is sexy. Like when you can hold space for your woman, because because you're like connected to your emotions, and you can hold space for your woman's emotional landscape. You can do that with some confidence, and there's some swagger there, and that shit is hot.
And it's very powerful, because you've just you have an entire second manual. You have one manual that's helped you this far, and now you have a second manual that's going to take you the rest of the way. And you didn't know you needed it, but you've got it, and now you have all of these tools. You have all of these answers. It's going to deepen your connection with your partner, with your friends, with your kids, with your colleagues. It's a whole extra manual to kick ass in a whole different dimension of life.
Absolutely. And if you're a parent, or you're going to become a parent, and you're moving through your relationship with this, your kids are just going to learn it by osmosis, and they're going to bring that into their relationships with their friends and with their partners when they get to that age. And like, just the ripple effect is incredible and beautiful.
Amazing. Matt, what a fantastic chat podcast episode. I've loved this, dude.
I've loved this too, Tim. I could go for another 2 hours easily.
So let's wrap things up here. How can people find you? How can they get connected with you?
So I've put something together for your audience. So, and this could be something that the women in the audience listening to this can, like, a link that they can send to their guy. They might be interested in reading it themselves. It's basically 5 tips for men on how to show up kind of more effectively in their relationships. And it's like 5 like commonplace experiences that happen in a relationship that kind of often go sideways. And it's to understand kind of what your female partner is doing in those moments, and sort of how to respond perhaps differently than you currently are, so you can have more closeness, you can have more intimacy. And there's a download. It's at mattcoach.com/easy. So mattcoach.com/easy, EASY. Drop in your email. There's a link that gets downloaded to you, and there's a little booklet. It's a little booklet, like a handful of pages. I think it's going to be super helpful. So that's the number one place to reach me. And then matt@mattcoach.com if anyone has any questions.
Amazing. And we'll make sure that those are in the show notes as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tim. I really just love talking about this, and this work has made such a huge difference in my life. I am in the best relationship I've ever been in, and it's because I put into practice all the things that we've talked about. And it's such a gift to have a space like this to share, to discuss, to dig deep. So thank you for creating this space, and for Couply, and for your curiosity.
Amen. Thank you so much, Matt. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Tim.